I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh, jeez. Good evening, everybody. Stay away from that side of the board table.
The typhoid boys.
Can I get an approval of the minutes of meetings held January 22nd and February 7th, please?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, any persons wishing to address the board? Bev, thank you. Can I get an approval of the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, moving on to the good news report. Deanne.
Good evening. We have two elements of celebration in our good news report tonight. And we're going to invite your fellow board member to join us at the podium as he has something to share in the way of recognition.
Good evening. As the president of the Associated School Boards of South Dakota, from February 19th to the 23rd, it's School Board Member Appreciation Week. South Dakota School Board Recognition Week is the time to recognize men and women who have dedicated their time and energy to serving on your locally elected school board. These people dedicate a lot of time, more than you see here, to many committees, reading, more reading, and trying to make this school district as good as it can be. So from the Associated School Boards of South Dakota, I want to thank you to our football school board for all that you do in that certificate for each year. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd.
And as Todd hands those out, we, of course, as the administration, would like to echo that thanks for the many hours that you put in serving in this capacity. It is truly heartwarming to know of the time commitment it takes on your part and what that does to better our school district as a whole. So we echo Todd's congratulations and recognition. Thought it'd be a nice little element to allow him, since he is the president of the Associated School Boards of South Dakota, to present that award. So thank you to Todd as well for his service in that role. So the next part of our good news report, we're honored to have our Native American Connections teacher, Janet Fleming Martin, from Lincoln High School here. Martin Fleming, I got that wrong, didn't I? Fleming Martin, I got her. Sorry about that. She's here from Lincoln High School along with some of her students, and they're going to share with us an exciting project that they've been working on this year, and they have some examples to show you as well. So, Janet, I'll let you take the floor.
You never know how blessed you are going to get with some students, and these are truly a blessing. I just want to tell you that they volunteered to introduce themselves, and I'm really excited about that. That takes a lot of courage to get up in front of you all and introduce themselves. But the thing that's most important and critical that I want you to know about this newsletter, this is not mine. These students and a whole classroom of students said during the Dakota 38 ride in December, Mrs. Martin, why are we the only ones that know this? We should teach everybody. You know, and sometimes teachers listen with their ears half open. And I said, yeah, well, let's go on. And they go, no, Mrs. Martin, you're not listening. We need to teach everybody. And I said, well, I'm listening now. And I said, so what do you want to do? And they said, we want to write a newsletter. And they have taken this on with a passion. It's a huge learning curve. We have technical support with Ms. Janet Kolb, thank the stars above. But it's been a huge learning curve. They've had to learn how to write. They've had to learn how to edit and learn that not all their words are going to get in a newsletter. And it has changed the dynamics of our classroom, and I do believe the way our students are being seen in our school. So if Martha would come up, please.
Oh, thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you. My name, well, this is weird. Anyways, my name is Martha Nagash, and I go to Lincoln High School. I'm a junior at Lincoln, and I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And the reason why I joined NAC was because as a non-Native, I don't know much history about Native American history, or just the people in general. And, I just took up this class as a way for me to learn about Native culture, religion, just everything about it. And this idea of the newsletter that we had was something that us as a class wanted to do to educate everyone. And, yeah. Oh, yeah. Any questions?
No questions. Just, are the rest of them going to be introducing? Okay.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to ask the same question if the rest were going to.
All right, good.
So that's perfect.
Hello, my name is Jade White, and I'm from McLaughlin, South Dakota, Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, and I'm the artist of this group, and I did the banner of the of this newsletter, and my a new piece that I'm soon about to put in the newspaper is this character here. His name is Iktomi, and in our Native culture, he's a trickster, and like he's not really a good person to be around, and just don't want to be around him. But yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Thank you.
Good art.
Hi, I'm Luisa Sargent Ponce. I'm from Crow Creek, and for this newsletter, I was a writer, editor, all that jazz. In this newsletter, it teaches us a lot, because for this newsletter, really, it brought us all together, and really our main purpose for everything in this article is teaching. We want others to understand our culture, how we learn from our past as people, and we just want people to understand by this newsletter. And one editorial I wrote was about boarding schools. Not very many people know about boarding schools, so when I edit, I put everything out there for the people. I want them to learn from this. It's my main purpose, but other than that, thank you for your time.
Hello everyone, I'm Delilah. I'm a sophomore at Lincoln, and I am from Yankton Sioux, and I write the poetry in the newsletter. One of our topics in this was the boarding schools, like Luisa said, and I wrote a poem called Lost Children, and if you wouldn't mind, I would love to read it to you guys. Let's unbuckle the history that hasn't been told, rewind to this scene where thousands of red children were taken away from families, placed in hollow rooms inside a boarding school, stripped from a powerful kinship circle. Lost, confused, hurt and afraid, forbidden to speak their language. Appearances forcibly changed, being tortured and killed, burned in unmarked graves. And I guess my purpose here is I want you guys to learn with me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
I'll just finish up by saying these incredible students are my honor to work with each and every day. And that really got me, so I am going to be done too.
And I will just wrap up by saying that their newest newsletter, you all received a copy of that right now. It will be released at Lincoln tomorrow. So this is literally hot off the press. They are working on the March edition right now. And the time and commitment it takes not only to research their articles and to write those poetry pieces from the heart, I think is an effort that they're probably all learning a lot from. So we want to thank them for coming tonight to share with us their passions and so that we can learn along with them.
I'm just going
to add, I think that this looks like such a professional production. It's very, very well done. And I think the beauty of it is that there's only 4 of you here, and I know that I see other names in this that aren't here, but clearly each of you have a role and a talent that you bring. And maybe not all of you like to write poetry, and maybe not all of you are amazing artists, but together, what you have created is really, really a great piece that other people, again, education, and I think that's such a huge piece for all students, and not just Lincoln, but other schools. And so hopefully this is something that we could even get to maybe other high schools. I don't know if there's other classes that are working on that, but what a great way to share information, because this isn't just Lincoln specific. This is your past, your history. It's the things that you're interested in that are important to you, and that deserves to be shared with a greater audience than just Lincoln High School. So congratulations on this. Very nice work.
And I want to commend your teacher. I volunteer a lot at Lincoln, and I see her going through the halls, and this is just another example of how involved you are and invested in these students. And I know it's easy to do when you have amazing students like this, but thank you for doing that and taking the extra effort to get this to fruition. So thank you.
I'd like to thank the teacher, but the students. I know how tough it is to stand up and talk about your heritage. I know a little bit about Native American. I am part Native American, but to put your heart out there and put your emotions out there is very tough culturally, and you are each to be commended for the ability to do that and stepping outside your comfort zone and all of those things. It's huge, and thank you so very much.
And thank you for educating the other students. I think that's important. What's the circulation of this, just through Lincoln? Well, thank you guys. I appreciate that.
And I just,
I'd subscribe.
I think it would benefit our entire school district, absolutely. The heart and soul that you students have put into this is just amazing, and I'm so proud of you for coming up here, not to sound like your mom, but so proud of you to come up here. As we've all said, it can be a little scary speaking in public sometimes, but just proud of you for coming up and doing that and sharing this with us. I can't wait to read through the stories and the poetry and see some more of your artwork. I think it's great. So thank you. Okay, thank you. Election here. Okay. Didn't see any conflicts of interest this week. See none. Moving on to the approval of the consent agenda. Can I get a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And can I get a motion for the supplemental consent agenda items 9A, claims to Sanford, please? A, 1, 2, 3.
So move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes with 2 abstentions from Board Member Ryder and Board Member Mickelson. And can I get a motion and a second for supplemental consent agenda items 9B, 1, and 2 for claims to Avera, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, that passes with 1 abstention from myself. All right, moving on to the reports of the superintendent.
Okay, we have 3 reports tonight. The first report comes to you from Ann Smith from our Curriculum Services Department regarding our gifted program review.
Good evening. The Gifted Education Program serves children and youth whose learning characteristics and educational needs require qualitatively differentiated educational experiences and/or services. We realize that as intellectual capacity increases, so does the asynchronicity that distinguishes gifted learners, and so therefore the Sioux Falls School District has developed a continuum of services that includes the Challenge Center at Robert Frost for highly gifted learners in grades 2 through 5, the Honors Program at Edison Middle School for gifted learners in grades 6 through 8, and in addition to those 2 specialized programs, a pull-out program that serves students identified as gifted who are attending any elementary or middle school in the district. At the high school level, there's a wide variety of advanced placement classes and accelerated classes, as well as multiple pathways that include the CTE Academy and New Tech High. It's been about 10 years since we last reviewed the Gifted Education Program, so we felt it was time to take a look at it again and convened a committee consisting of parents, teachers, and administrators. This committee met 6 times over the past year. During these meetings, 3 areas of concerns emerged: identification of gifted students, the social and emotional needs of gifted students, and strategies for strengthening the Gifted Education Program. As a result of our study, we've brought forward the following recommendations. In the area of identifying students, when we looked at the data, we see that over the past 10 years, the number of gifted education students, the number of students identified as gifted in the district has declined, as has the overall percentage of students identified as gifted. When we further broke out those numbers, we saw that we have a disproportionality of students who are identified, so that our gifted education population does not reflect the same makeup as our overall population. To address that, we recommend, and the district will implement, changing the identification criteria. Currently, in order to be certified as gifted, students have to score in the 92nd percentile on the Cognitive Abilities Test, the COGAT. When this was set about 10 years ago, this was a choice of our district. This is not like it's some national norm that says this is what you have to be gifted. In light of the patterns that we're seeing, we believe that if by lowering that to the 90th percentile, we'll get more kids identified as gifted, so more kids will receive the services to further develop their potential. We would not change the Challenge Center. Again, that program is designed for highly gifted students. So that percentage would stay at the 95th percentile on the COGAT. It would just be the students identified for overall gifted education services that would be lowered to the 90th percentile. The other thing that we will try that we are trying, a couple of the gifted education teachers at the elementary level are piloting administering the Naglieri test, which we currently give to all second graders. The Naglieri is a nonverbal test. The intention, you give it at a young age because it's not as dependent upon language and verbal skills. You're more likely to get at the thinking skills. But since we don't ever administer that broadly across all students again, perhaps we're missing some students. So what happens if we administer that at the 4th grade level? It's also, 2nd grade is the earliest you would want to administer that test. So are there more students that you'll catch after they've had some more time to develop? The other thing that we'll be doing is using the MAP scores as a screener for which kids will do that COGAT testing, because all students will be taking the MAP test K through 6. We can look at identifying which percentile band on the MAP test correlates with students who are likely to score as gifted on the COGAT, and that can be our screener. So if we're missing kids at 2nd, 3rd, 4th, we can catch them so they don't fall through the cracks. The other thing we need to do is provide some professional development for our instructional staff on the characteristics of gifted learners. Sometimes the perception is that giftedness means high academic achievement, that your gifted learner is the compliant learner who sits in the classroom and just soaks everything up like a sponge and produces what they're asked to produce, and that's the ones that are targeted as your gifted learners, when in reality, sometimes that asynchronicity results in exactly the opposite happening. This is the child whose brain is acting so fast and soaking up information so quickly that they become bored and they start acting out, or they just don't track with what's going on with the rest of the class. So the more that we can help our instructional staff recognize how do you see in the way a student answers questions the possibility that they might actually be a gifted learner. This can also help us identify ELL students or some other students where that teacher is seeing on an ongoing basis that they're responding in a way that suggests that their brain works differently. And I should mention that students can be referred for screening, for testing for giftedness by their teacher. They can be referred by a parent. They can be referred through a variety. They don't have to have come up through these other ways. We do like to be sure that the students who we are testing with the COGAT fit a profile, because it can be very frustrating. The COGAT test is not an easy test to take. So we don't want students taking it unnecessarily. In the area of social and emotional needs for gifted learners, our Challenge Center, which serves those 2nd through 5th grade learners, is the ideal, and it's the highly gifted, so the ones whose asynchronicity is really making them less like their peers than any other student. Their curriculum would benefit from specific lessons designed to help those students understand themselves. Why do I think the way I think? Why am I so different from all of my peers? So Steve Davis will be providing some professional development this Friday, working with our Challenge Center teachers on lessons that pull from literature and films to help students see themselves and see examples of other gifted learners, other gifted kids who are like them. We will also be providing some professional development for counselors, particularly those counselors at Robert Frost and Edison, but counselors all across the district. Again, to be sure to help remind our school counselors that gifted learners have specific social and emotional needs because of this asynchronicity, because of the difference in the way their brain works. Then the final recommendation is that our Challenge Center and Honors Program teachers be required to have the gifted education endorsement. Currently, those teachers are not required to have the endorsement. The teachers that teach our pull-out classes are. This would be something that we would grandfather in, so it's not that teachers who are currently teaching in those programs are not going to be able to teach if they don't get the endorsement. They will be recommended to get the endorsement, but we would not hire another teacher to fill a slot there without, making it clear that they need to get that endorsement. And then in terms of just looking forward, how do we continue to strengthen the program? The first recommendation, and which has actually already been addressed, is that there would be a gifted education program coordinator. We had one several years ago. It's been many years since we've had a specific gifted education program coordinator. Ann Williams is the coordinator of specialized programs for the districts. She has started meeting with the gifted education teachers, and she will serve as the gifted education program coordinator. We will continue to offer ongoing professional development for our gifted education teachers, and we will begin or continue examining the gifted education offerings at all middle schools, that the middle school level is where the committee expressed the most strongly a concern that we need to be sure that students have access to equitable programming regardless of where they choose to attend school. So how do we make sure that we're offering equitable gifted programming at Whittier and McGovern and Patrick Henry and Memorial? Understanding that that honors program is going to be a unique and different way of providing gifted education, but then how do we make sure that our pull-out programming is equitable at those other schools? And then finally, rather than waiting another 10 years to come back and look at the gifted education program, we're recommending that we reconvene that gifted education committee periodically, probably at least annually, just to review where we're going, you know, how are these things working? Now that we've adjusted the identification criteria, what are we seeing? Are we seeing the trends that we wanted to see? Are things developing that we thought we had taken care of or that are new that we need to address? So we would, as I say, recommend reconvening that gifted education program review committee. That completes the recommendations from the gifted education program review. I would ask that you would acknowledge the report.
Can I ask just a couple questions, Anne?
Yes.
When we go from 92 to 90%, do we know approximately how many more students, like if on past numbers, what that would be?
We did look at that, the teachers that were looking at that, and I should mention that within that matrix, it isn't just the one test. It's also bringing in some achievement data from, we'll move to the map, we were using the Iowa test, so that gets figured in there as well. But yeah, we looked at those numbers to try to see where we were at, and it looks like by doing that, it would get us closer to that 8% mark again, which is what we're kind of targeting to be back where we were in terms of percentage of students.
And with the teachers at schools that are not the Challenge Center, they would be able to absorb those. It's good, probably numbers-wise and all that.
It should be because, again, they serve groups of students, and we have, you know, by grouping the students, we should be able to a certain extent. It does mean 8% of our current population is going to be more students than we have now. It will take us a while to get there. I can't say that I won't be standing up in front of you in 2 or 3 years saying we now have 2,000 students who are qualified as gifted in our current gifted FTE, but that would be, I think you would all be delighted to have me standing up here and saying that to you.
And then are we still, I remember when my children in elementary, was it 18 months between when they can take, say a parent or a teacher then wants them to be tested, so if they take that at 2nd grade, it has to be at least 18 months. Is that
I believe that's what the COGAT recommendation. I know that it's more than a year. So
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I've got a question, comment. The lowering the standard, the benchmark from 92 to 90%, just to get our numbers up there, doesn't just feel right to me. And I, as we went through our strategic planning process, one of the commitments that the district made, that the board made, is that we're not going to do anything just to keep numbers someplace. And I understand that the 92% was an arbitrary number 10 years ago, but why? How did we arrive at 90% today?
Well, and the other piece of it is that 10 years ago, we weren't using COGAT either. We were using the KBIT, which is a different test. And at that point in time, the KBIT hadn't been updated, so we switched to the COGAT because it was a newer test, not knowing where did we need to set our COGAT benchmark to match the results that we were getting with the KBIT. So that's what we're questioning. Did we set, was that 92nd percentile too high when we set it, and that it didn't really match the KBIT?
Compared to the other school districts around the country that you went out and talked to, looked at, are they at more at a 90% than the 92?
And I don't know what they used for their COGAT percentile, but what I did read is that most of them look at targeting that upper 10% of their students. So it would seem to me that then what we're trying to do is figure out how do we set this so that we're getting about that 10% mark.
It still doesn't feel right to me, but I'm just one person, so I just feel like we're lowering a standard. There may be other things that we could look at. I mean, I don't know. It just,
I agree.
that bothers me just a bit.
I don't feel that we're lowering the standard. I feel like we're maybe opening doors for those that could benefit from a gifted program.
So then we should lower the Challenge Center from 95 to 93 to open more doors.
Well, it takes then the kids away from their home schools that are being able to be pulled out of their classrooms for certain subjects.
And I appreciate that point. I'm still not completely comfortable, but thank you.
Any other questions?
With what I was excited to see in dealing with the strategic plan is that we're hoping to help students who might not typically perform well on those tests, who are gifted, to do that. And is that through this, I'm looking at the study from Tulsa and so forth, so how will that, could you go more in detail maybe on that? Because that's where I thought maybe we would maybe help with more on our strategic plan and getting students identified in the gifted program who should be, but have other barriers blocking them from that.
And that's one of the, nationwide, the largest growing population of students is our ELL students, not just in the Sioux Falls School District, but nationwide. And that's why they're grappling with this, because our tests, whether we like it or not, our tests are so language-based. Even when we try to get a nonverbal test, it's still an English nonverbal test. We're still expecting the responses to come to us in English. So that's one shortcoming of testing in general. The other thing that some districts, as we reviewed what some districts are doing, they have moved away from relying on tests like the COGAT, and they've started doing some alternative ways of trying to broaden gifted services. So what my takeaway from the research that we did is that people are really struggling to figure out how to make sure that we're truly identifying gifted learners and not just rewarding certain backgrounds and behaviors. And that there possibly is something endemic in our testing that tends to reward, perhaps not what it is that we think we're identifying.
And by allowing them to at least start in the gifted program, maybe not the challenge, I feel like we'll have a bigger funnel to get them, and to allow the teacher or parent to push them to that, because it can still, there's other hoops they can go through to end up at the Challenge Center if they're not at that 95% as well.
Yeah, and if they scored at the 90th percentile at second grade, that doesn't mean that if they take the test at third grade, you'll get the same results. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, can I get a motion and a second to approve the gifted program review, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Well, I think, one of the things we talked about in our strategic plan was not just to increase our gifted program, but was really equitable access to our gifted program. So, we'll continue to review this, but maybe by broadening going down to that 90%, we'll be able to capture more students and really hopefully make it more equitable than it has historically been.
I wonder if it wouldn't be interesting data to look at to say from an elementary perspective, if we look at all of our elementary schools and who's in the gifted program now, just by numbers. And if we look at 6 months from now or the beginning of next school year and we say which elementary schools have really increased their numbers of students in the gifted program, I think that would make us feel better to say the equitable access makes sense, or we're identifying students who maybe were from lower incomes or from ELL types of populations, I think that would make me feel better to know that the numbers we're moving aren't the same numbers of the kids who are in the program now, but we truly are reaching out to those different populations, which is what our real bigger goal is. So I don't know if that's something we could see down the road, just as a comparison would be beneficial.
Yeah. And just a quick anecdote, we actually, as we were focusing on these scores and raising more awareness and doing more talking about it, at McGovern, we have identified, just within the last 3 months, 6 additional students for gifted services that hadn't been
overlooked
missed before. So we're, you know,
yeah.
I
think those are the important stories that we need to hear, you know, not that we just increased by, we're at our 8%, you know, yay, you know, but who are those 2% that we were missing and how did we get to them now? So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay.
Our next report is a report that comes to you from Deb Muhlenberg-Wilson. It is a culturally responsive practices update directly from our strategic plan.
Good evening. I would be remiss if I took all the credit for this report. I would tell you that Mr. Nold and Dr. Boyson and I have worked together to bring this forward. This is one of the areas of the strategic plan that has much overlap between areas. So this plan does bring to you an update on priority statement 4, which says the Sioux Falls School District will develop strategies to enhance a culturally responsive workforce. As a part of the strategic planning process, we did establish measurable goals that by 2020, the number of students who report adults have high expectations and positive attitudes toward all students, regardless of background, will increase by 8%. Last year, we established survey questions regarding this, and then we baselined a year ago now. So our baseline is at 78%. And then there's a compadre goal that asks staff the same questions as it relates to that. And staff's response was at 87.6%. So what are culturally responsive practices? So these practices recognize the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of our learning. So what we see in textbooks, what we see in our instruction is all reflective. It also practices acknowledgement, validation, and affirms students' homes cultures for the purpose of building and bridging student success into our school cultures. And finally, these practices develop and sustain cultural knowledge of students and promote critical consciousness in our classroom and in our curriculum. So what have we done? A year ago, we started a think tank that was facilitated by the University of South Dakota professor Derek Robinson, so that a neutral person led us on this journey to talk about what it is, to inform us, to reflect on where we are, our needs, and to brainstorm future directions. An extension of that became this fall, when we had a 16-hour culturally responsive course that was taught, and 4 Sioux Falls Public School leadership teams were a part of that. Roosevelt High School, Edison Middle School, Susan B. Anthony Elementary School, and Oscar Howe Elementary School. Those teams included leadership staff, but also included counselors and teachers. So we broadened our perspective and thoughts. They reviewed data about their schools. They learned about the constructs of culturally responsive practices, and they worked as a team to develop an action plan for their individual school community. So what did we learn? Well, in addition to learning about the practices, we also learned things about our model and what we needed to consider and reflect on as we move forward as a district. So we know that we should recognize that different schools are at different points in understanding and incorporating culturally responsive practices. As we listened to principals and to teachers, you hear schools who are doing things and schools who are still moving toward that. So we have to be, to really recognize that that is where we are as a district. We also have to validate that there are things happening in our schools toward this statement right now, and we need to continue to expand and individualize these practices. Surely, the presentation you heard during the Good News report is one of those practices that we need to recognize is happening, and how do we expand on some of those things. We'll need to ensure that there are resources available for schools to access as they learn, dialogue, and build their own school plans. And then we know we have to develop a system that ensures this isn't a one-time kind of activity, but that it's a systemic process in our districts moving forward toward improving schools. So, with that in mind, I apologize to the audience for my lack of hitting the button. So, for our buildings, that part of the systemic process will be that each school annually will outline action steps within the school improvement planning process that their school will take in that next year. So each school can evaluate where they are and where they need to start moving, and that could be tailored to their school and consider those individual components. The district this year, during the summer symposium, will focus one whole strand of the symposium on culturally responsive practices. And we've arranged for a nationally recognized speaker on this topic regarding classroom implementation to come and lead that. We'll have ongoing dialogue with USD to work with building teams on enhancing those practices in their individual plans. We'll develop a resource document for building teams to learn from other schools and what's going on already in our district. And we'll continue providing certified PAGE trainers on staff to support that training, which is an extension of the components of this. So that's our update on where we are and how we're moving forward, so that you know how that systemic dialogue will happen. And again, I think there are many great things going on already, and how do we build on those and share those? So I would ask you to acknowledge the report, and I would welcome any questions.
When will it spread to the remaining buildings then in the district?
Yep. So on March 13th, we have outlined an after-school session for all the principals to start to raise their awareness and their understanding. That will give principals time to start to think about how they want to structure that at their buildings before they work on their school improvement plans late spring and summer. So next year, everyone will get their feet wet. Some will be at different places than others in the process.
Any other questions?
It was a short report with a lot of stuff in it. I don't know if you could tell that. There's a lot of stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. It's a really important initiative in our district, and yet I think the more we've worked on it, the more we know it has to come from those building teams. Mm-hmm. They know their schools, they know their students, and they know their staff. And so how do we support them to move this one forward?
Absolutely. All right. No further questions? Can I get a motion and a second to approve the culturally responsive practices update, please?
So moved. Second.
Any comments or any further discussion?
No. Well, as Brian said, it's a huge it's a huge undertaking, and I mean, it does go directly back to the strategic plan. I know that, you know, as our efforts to hire more, excuse me, culturally diverse teaching staff, I mean, this is all part of that process, and we're definitely working in the right direction.
And I think if we think back to our work session last week when we had our students saying, and we said, what's important in your schools? And we heard them say, we want teachers who look like us. We want teachers who are diverse. We want to learn from other people who are different from us too. And so I think, you know, like you said, it's a short report, but the impact that it makes is really very widespread in not just the school district, but also the community as well. So
the other thing one of the students talked about last week was one of you asked about what was important in building the culture at their school. And the student talked about how at her school, the principal had this theme, "We are one." Mm-hmm. And that it really didn't matter what the building looked like to her. It was that tone. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, that theme has been discussed at length in the culturally responsive work group. And as Mr. Nold and I and Dr. Boysen have taken USD professors on tours, that continues to rise up of that's what this is really about. It's about us all recognizing who we all are and bringing that common feeling of acceptance to it. Mm-hmm. So it's another example of what's already going on that we just have to keep expanding on.
And I think it's great that you've already realized the differences that you can see building by building. I mean, even, you know, my two kids, they've been in 5 different buildings at this point, and I can tell that there's been a cultural difference at each one, and it's not just location or program or what have you. It's just for many different reasons. It's different. So I'm really glad that we're sort of acknowledging that difference at the building level. So it's good.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Although we did get a motion and second, yes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Okay, our final report is a legislative update that will come from Business Manager Beek.
Thank you, Dr. Maher and members of the board. We, at the second board meeting in January, we went through an abbreviated list of this because there wasn't that many bills out there. Then at our work session on the first Wednesday in February, we went through kind of the key bills. We kind of ran out of time, but we went through the key bills. So today, if it's okay with you, I will go through the bills that we haven't talked about yet and probably skip over the ones that are dead. Mm-hmm. If you see them in there and want to talk about our position on those, we can change it or whatever, but we probably don't need to spend a lot of time on bills that have died. So I'll start. So on page 2 would be the first new bill. It's 1114. Would establish requirements for students wishing to return to the student's resident district or assigned school after the conclusion of a school year, if they've open enrolled. And they have August 1st as the date in there. We support the bill as written, but monitor it closely. We think there should be a procedure for that. It's kind of vague in the law right now, so every school district can kind of make up its own rules on that. So we think it's a good idea. August 1 might not be the perfect date, but it's probably a good idea that that one be set. House Bill 1120, as on the next page, page 3. We did talk about that one. I'll just mention it today. It's the bill to allow homeschool students to participate in activities sponsored by the High School Activity Association or any other activity sponsored by the district. That bill, as I understand it, died on the House floor today. House Bill 1128, we talked about. That's another key bill. It has to do with provisions regarding increases in teacher pay. We talked about it a couple Wednesdays ago. It's in appropriations. That's where that's at. It's still live. Page 5, those bills are dead. Those are 1135, 1141, and 1142. Page 6 is the next bill that's alive that we haven't talked about, 1143. It would remove from the tax, or it would remove from the tax exempt rolls homes owned by school districts that are not occupied by certified teachers. Essentially, it's a home, like we have a few that we buy in anticipation of putting in a parking lot, and we rent it. If the house is in decent shape, we'll rent it out for a few years. It wouldn't be tax exempt. That makes sense. We're not using it for school districts, so we take no position on that bill. Next on page 7 is 1155. It directs the Department of Ed to develop and disseminate a resource for parents regarding language acquisition for preschool-age children who are deaf, for the superintendent of the state school for the deaf to establish an advisory committee, and for an annual report to be created and posted on the website. We recommend no position on that bill. 1166 provides cleanup language regarding which committee can approve recommendations from the Finance Accountability Board. We suggest no position on that bill. Apparently, there's also a question about whether that committee can even do anything. So I suppose if they're going to review it, they should be able to do something with those recommendations. 1172 was revised in State Affairs to include the sentence, "The chair of the public body shall reserve at every official meeting of the public body for a period for public comment limited in the chair's discretion, but not so limited to." So essentially, every meeting you have to provide for public comment. It's we have opposition to the bill. We thought the intent was fine, but our point is sometimes we have meetings like a work session where we don't necessarily have public comment built into it, and it seems like they're reacting to a case they didn't like. So we don't have it as a key bill, but we think it's probably not a good idea to pass that bill. Next page, 1178, provides a $10 per day fine for late audits for school districts and other local entities. We say no position on that bill. We regularly submit audits, and we regularly submit them on time. 1189 is a key bill that we did talk about last time, so I won't go through it, other than just to say it's in judiciary. It hasn't come out yet. The next page has 1198, which is a key bill we identified as a key bill that would forbid district employees to receive pay for doing union activities. That bill has died. Next page, 1205, is a bill that requires health plans to provide coverage for anesthesia for dental services. We say no position on that bill. 1211 was a key bill that we went over before. It would require school district opt-outs to be referred to a vote. We opposed it. It died. 1215, then on page 11, would revise certain details regarding forced reorganization of extremely small school districts. We recommend no position on that bill. Doesn't affect us. 1221 adds tribal schools who receive less than 50% of their funds from government sources to the private school tuition credit program. We suggest no position on that bill. 1232 has been revised from originally, and the House bill now provides opportunities for high school students to participate in a dual credit with state universities and technical schools. The bill outlines a reduced tuition rate, making dual credit affordable to all students by including the guidelines for students who qualify for free or reduced price lunch under the federal free or reduced lunch program. We support the bill as amended. 1239 is dead. 1240, the bill increases the alternative maximum amount, which actually is a limiting factor. Schools can raise through the capital outlay tax. The bill also allows a capital outlay levy sufficient enough to pay capital outlay certificates issued before July 1, 2016, plus $500 per student. We would suggest opposing the bill. It's aimed at the schools that are already receiving the most capital outlay per student. If they want to do anything with the limitations, and they should, it should be to look at bringing up those schools below average on the capital outlay per student, not increasing the ones at the top. 1242 was a key bill that we went over on the first Wednesday in February. It has died. It was meant to provide a freedom of expression in high school journalism classes. 56 is another key bill we went over. It is dead as well. It attempted to move the compulsory attendance age from 5 and 6 years to 7 and 8. 1263 is a bill that would increase the allowable general fund balance percentage by 10 percentage points for each category of schools. Large schools like us would go from 25 to 35. We say no position on that bill. We're nowhere near that cap and don't think we ever will be. 1271 appears to be cleaning up some language, but has added the exceptions of non-public schools and churches to a bill regarding carrying of certain guns on certain premises. We suggest no position on that bill. Strange. House Bill 1276 was a key bill we went over earlier this month. That's to provide a property tax exemption to parents of certain students receiving alternative instruction. We oppose that bill. It's in Appropriations Committee. 1290 would require a 30-day public opportunity for inspection when a public body plans to enter into an agreement with a private person, firm, corporation if the subject of the agreement is a project exceeding $500,000. We oppose the bill. The bill is unnecessary because public contract procedures and processes are comprehensively governed in other areas of state law, including 1320, 518A, 518B. There may be instances in which a public body needs to enter into an agreement in an expedited time frame, less than 30 days. Next bill is on page 17, is 1297. It eliminates the 2022 per pupil alternative capital outlay maximums for schools that have outstanding debts for capital outlay certificates originally issued prior to July 1, 2016. Currently, this exception is triggered only if the limitation will cause the district to default on the certificates. We suggest an amendment. The exception should apply to both new capital outlay limitation as of July 1, 2016. The more common limitation is growth of the percent or inflation, whichever is less, plus new construction. The exception currently contained in the bill is only for districts that receive the most capital outlay dollars per student. It should apply to all. 1298 would allow residents of school districts that are currently forced to consolidate because of low numbers to instead vote to become a private school system. The new system would not be eligible for public funds. It's kind of a strange bill. We oppose or suggest opposing it. Over time, there would be pockets of private school systems throughout the state where the landowners pay no school property taxes, if this bill passed. The bill 1299 would prevent local jurisdictions from imposing firearm restrictions. We suggest opposing the bill. The entire bill is vague in definition of campus and area. I think we talked about that bill at the work session. So we're still opposed on that bill. 1303 is an act to prohibit certain incentives and punishments in association with school surveys and to impose a penalty therefore. The bill essentially would prohibit a teacher or any other school district person from offering any incentive to any student or parent in association with any survey. It states that the students cannot be punished for not participating in a survey and establishes that a violation is a Class 1 misdemeanor. We oppose the bill. A student survey is a tool which provides valuable firsthand information to a district and its agency partners. Some, but not all, surveys ask sensitive personal information, in which case prior consent is required. In circumstances, an incentive to participate in a survey is appropriate and certainly should not be a crime. House Bill 1315 is a placeholder for school funding legislation. No position. When we get on to now the next group of bills, Senate Bill 46 was amended. We talked about it before. The bill has been amended to require all districts to adopt a policy for school district employees on the use of restraint and seclusion. We asked for an amendment to be put on it. It was put on it, so now we're suggesting supporting as amended. Senate Bill 83 has been slightly amended. I think we talked about, yeah, that's a key bill. We talked about that one. It's passed out of Senate Ed 43. It's going to the Senate floor. We did talk about that one at, last time we met. Senate Bill 84, we also discussed. That was not a key bill, but it was that one that we talked about here, and we held it back on our position so we could look at the ruling from the courts, and then the bill has been amended since then. We're still suggesting opposing the bill. It's about confidentiality provisions on in lawsuits is what that bill's about. We've talked about it twice now. This is the third time. Senate Bill 87 is a key bill we talked about a couple Wednesdays ago. That bill is dead. Senate Bill 94 would add the following language to allow homeschool students the ability to be eligible for the South Dakota Opportunity Scholarship. They have to have a transcript of completed comparable coursework issued by the parent or guardian. And it has added the following language to allow homeschool students the ability to be eligible for the South Dakota Opportunity Scholarship. Provide a transcript of completed comparable coursework, or the guardian lists on the certificate of excuse that meets the course requirements of 135531. We suggest no position on that bill. Senate Bill 100 is a bill that requires public entities to make their audits available on their website and provide the audit to their board members. It also requires state entities to make subrecipient grant reviews public and limits conflicts of interest for those state employees and officers who are involved in determining sub-grant recipients. The part that applies to us more directly, we already do. So we support the bill. Senate Bill 117 strikes the requirement in the bill or in the private school scholarship program the scholarship be paid in 2 semi-annual installments, as well as some other that would appear to be cleanup amendments. Suggests no position. Senate Bill 131 creates the Career and Tech Ed Consortium grants program and provides grants for those. We support the bill. Grant funding would provide opportunities for innovation and collaboration to develop expanded opportunities for students. Senate Bill 132 establishes an Early Learning Advisory Council and defines its membership. We support that bill. Senate Bill 142 provides an opt-out and opt-out procedures similar to the general fund opt-out for capital outlay certificates. We support that bill. Since they limited capital outlay, this would be another option for schools. They were going to issue capital outlay certificates perhaps to get back up towards that $3 levy that we used to have. Senate Bill 143 requires all employees in the state who are eligible for SDRS to be members of the state health plan. We oppose that bill. We looked at that many years ago. It would cost us a lot of money to join the state health plan. Senate Bill 145 clarifies that the Department of Labor is the exclusive fact finder for any issue related to the administration of workers' compensation laws. We support that bill. The Department of Labor is the statutory fact finder for workers' compensation issues and should also be responsible for determining the facts regarding a claim of bad faith. Senate Bill 148 addresses the regulation of high school interscholastic activities to an association minor language cleanup bill in the bill, and added a commission, COSA, as a recognized organization that can delegate supervision and regulation of high school interscholastic activities. We take no position on that bill. Senate Bill 160 prohibits instruction in gender identity or gender expression to any student in kindergarten to 7th grade in any public school. We suggest opposing the bill. Instruction on gender is appropriate in some circumstances for students in kindergarten through 7th grade. Senate Bill 162 requires schools to serve students a school lunch regardless of whether the student pays for it. We would suggest opposing the bill just on general principle. It would be an unfunded mandate. The state should appropriate money to reimburse the school to reimburse the cost of unpaid meals if it wishes to adopt the bill. Now, we've had a donor in our school district, so we're essentially following this, but it's paid for by donations from the Barrel House. Senate Bill 202 would require posting of a certain notice on certain public restrooms. Bills, the district, we oppose this bill. I think we actually have the wrong write-up for the wrong bill there. So, this was, the write-up is about the bill that said email correspondence correspondence would be public record unless there was some other reason it wasn't. And so that's the write-up you see there. We'll have to get that flushed out.
Wait, which one are you?
202.
202? So
The
202 is,
impact
this is
and
not the
position
description?
Did not match the
Okay.
title. Yeah. I know on the one, the impact of the bill that's there about the personal correspondence, we oppose that bill. We're recommending voting on that. Don't know that that's the right number. I don't know if that's the right title. I'm not sure as I stand here. Senate Bill 212 would add tribally controlled or BIE schools to those that can receive, where feasible, telecommunications services provided by BIT, the Bureau of Information and Technology. We take no position on that bill. And 213 provides that certain education funding provisions be revised to address the CPI. We take no position on that bill either. That's it. If there aren't any changes, other than we'll have to figure out, I think those were supposed to be two bills and one of them's missing out of here, that title and the other one. I think we were analyzing both. We'll figure that out and get that out. But other than that, I would ask that you approve as recommended or presented.
Okay. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the 2018 legislative update?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn? So moved. Thank you, everybody.